Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are discussing writing better AI prompts for marketing.
So what has become very clear is that you can get the generative AI tools to do really bad, rubbish content, and you can also get them to create really good quality content. And what it really comes down to is the quality of the prompts. But just like over the years, we've learned to search in Google. We know how to search in Google to get the results that we're looking for. And if we don't get the results we want, we then search slightly differently. We've learned that technique. Well, we're learning that technique for generative AIs. But there's a lot more complexity. So there's some high-level stuff that's pretty simple, and we'll go through that today. But also you can dig into this a bit more deeply to get the generative AIs doing things that they won't do easily on a kind of standard prompt. So, for example, if you want any of them to write really long-form content, they're horrible at it. They'll say, write a 5,000-word article on this, and they'll write you 300 or 500 words. So it's working out how we get around that. So we've been doing a load of research into this for a while, testing all this kind of stuff out. And then we were building our ChatGPT masterclass. And as the research for that, we built out a load of processes to go with it. Now, you attended the ChatGPT masterclass, didn't you?
I was blown away. Honestly, guys, I know I'm somewhat biased because obviously I work with the guys here, but it really, really helpful. And I thought I knew quite a lot about it, but I realised how little I knew. So the value added that I was able to take back to my teams is so good just to be able to share that. And you see their eyes like catch fire with, wow, the possibilities here are huge.
I mean, we've got another one. I think 1st of May is the next one.
Do you know what I really loved about it? Like, I've attended a lot of like online sessions and stuff, and very often just what you get is it's just telling you stuff that you can get anywhere. And very often it's people that have played around a little bit with it, but they haven't really, like, they're still at that early stage of, wow, isn't this amazing? Yeah. And actually you dug so much deeper than that. So like the take home and the ROI from that whole session was huge. Yeah,
thank you for that promotion.
Also, someone who would have done the masterclass a few months ago versus someone who would have done the most recent one would be able to tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, we're updating it every week.
Updated.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so targetinternet.com/masterclass. We do loads of them on different topics. I think GA4 and AI are the big things that we're doing on at the moment. So there are things that come out that you suddenly start to realise. So you'll see this everywhere, the role playing. So asking as part of the prompt, you are for this type. So I always say, tell the generative AI tool, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, what it is, and then who the target audience is. That's the bit that everyone misses. So you are this person, but you're doing it for this audience. So put your persona in, and the more detail on your persona, the better.
So you are an SEO expert, or you are an expert in engaging social media.
Exactly that. And then say your target audience are digital marketers. So it will get the tone right in terms of who it's doing. So that two things, if you think about the principles of marketing full stop, you have to have expertise. So you have to say to the tool, you have expertise, but also you need to define who your target persona is. And that's really what their role is, their level of expertise, what their goals are, what their frustrations are in relation to it. And if it understands that more, it's likely to output content that is more appropriate for that target audience.
You can have a lot of fun with this as well. And I'd encourage people to do that. Like, you are a dodgy geezer from a Guy Ritchie movie.
But you can do all those kind of things.
Yeah, you can, and it does.
There's a couple of prompt repositories that do a lot of that stuff. So it says, you are an expert interviewer. Yeah. So you could practice interviewing for a certain job, but it will also do, you are a comedian. I mean, they're terrible. They're so bad. One thing it hasn't got good at yet. But one thing I've learned from this is that if I want it to write in my tone of voice, I can't just say, you're an expert digital marketer, write an article in. So what I did is I took a load of articles that I'd written and some expert excerpts from my books and things like that, and I put it all into a PDF document. And then I uploaded the PDF document. So you should definitely do this. Upload the PDF document. It seems to work better with PDFs than it does web pages for this. And you say, write me a prompt to repeat the tone of voice that is used in this file. And what it will do is go away, analyze that text in that PDF, and write you a really, really detailed prompt. And then what you can do is one of two things. Is either every time you write a prompt going forward, you just cut and paste that out. So I have a little folder on my desktop that's got all those things in it, different people's tones of voices. And I cut and paste that into the particular prompt. Works really, really well. We'll share it, actually. We'll share it on the show notes. So targetinternet.com/podcast. And you can see it, how detailed it is. But then what you can do, if you do a custom GPT, you can just add it as a file. So you've got your kind of library of files, and you can say, use the tone of voice in the repository, in the file, to write this content. But then what you could do is you could get your 5 leading people, do a tone of voice for each one, and tell it each time which tone of voice it should be using. And it works incredibly well. It does a really nice kind of job of doing it. So that for me was a real game changer of suddenly it's writing without using superfluous words, because it tends to be quite flowery in the language it uses otherwise. It's being informative without being patronizing. It will go through and give loads of examples. It will give you professional context, all that kind of stuff as well.
I've had a fair amount of success when I'm writing prompts saying, for your tone of voice, use, and then you give it a web URL.
Excellent.
And that works very, very well. And what ChatGPT is linked to Bing, and the whole little doing research with Bing goes and looks up. So that you can do that as well.
So a couple of things. We've talked about Keywords Everywhere before, in that Keywords Everywhere is a keyword research tool, but it also has a brilliant thing that when you go into ChatGPT, it will have a little Keywords Everywhere prompt, and it's got all these templates. So it's got writing templates like a BAB, before, after, bridge, an ADA, attention, interest, desire, and action. But you can select the tone of voice, and you can select the writing style, and it will just draft you up a nice prompt. But the one thing it does, which I think is great, which is it says, do not self-reference. It has a horrible habit of just referencing what it's done. And then the best one is, please don't explain what you're doing. Because otherwise it goes, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write something in your tone of voice. I've just written something in your tone of voice. And
then
it's like,
people copy and paste it and not realise.
I've seen a load of this now. So people are copying and pasting it into their web pages, and they're publishing an article, and it said, I will write an article. It's the first words. It's like, wowzers. So yeah, do that, and it will help. But the Keywords Everywhere templates have all that baked into them. So it makes it a lot easier to do that as well.
And do you need an account for that, a Keywords Everywhere account?
Yeah, so you get a Keywords Everywhere account. You don't need a paid-for account, interestingly, or some parts of it. So for the prompts, you don't need, but some other parts you do. Yeah. But even a paid-for account, which I would 100% recommend. Yeah. And by the way, we don't have an affiliate relationship with them, so maybe we should do.
Well, they're just
it's so
really
cheap
good,
anyway, right?
But it's just so good.
So it's like $12 for the year. Builds into Google Chrome, does all this kind of cool stuff. I mentioned prompt repositories. We'll put the links into the show notes as normal, but there's one called Awesome ChatGPT Prompt. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's on GitHub, which is like a repository for coding stuff, but it's got loads of those role plays. So it's got all the role plays that you can play around with, and they give you really good insight into, not that you're necessarily going to use those out of the box, but more that this is the way you can get it to get better results from it. Okay.
I'm going to give a shout out for something slightly different.
That's right.
Because I know a lot of people are averse to AI, and I hear you. I was there. But actually, one of the things I've found is that when you start playing around with particularly some of the like writing models that the prompt tools use, you just rattled off a few of them there. They're so good. They're so good, and actually, just understanding and seeing how it's applying, just a consistent pattern to how words are being written. Just so useful. And that's actually how I came across those writing frameworks in the first place. I'd never heard of ADA before. Yeah. I'd never heard of Problem Agitate Solution, the PAS framework, but they're so powerful. And once you recognize those, actually you find yourself leaning on those. Oh, okay, that's the perfect framework for writing a piece like that. And actually I've found it's dramatically improved my own writing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Because you get to experiment. Like you can ask it to write 3 times. And actually all the time when you're using AI prompts like this, particularly with those writing frameworks, I'll always ask it to generate 3 or 4 examples. And then I read through and I like to lift the best bits from each and stitch them together. So you can take, it's randomness, it's experimenting. It's, in a way, it's running its own ABC experiments that I'm then compiling which one has the greatest effect on me and combining that into an Uber post that definitely does well. And I've A/B tested these things, and definitely it can outperform my writing skills for sure. But it's a combination. You realise actually you're bringing a lot of yourself to this, and you're editing and curating as you go.
And that's really good for storytelling and making sure that you're hitting your user's intentions at each point
and getting to the point. Right, I really struggle with succinctness. Could you tell?
I saw it dozed off.
But those frameworks help you be really succinct. Get in there, get the job done, get out.
The sweet spot with this then is that you go in, you define your persona really clearly in the prompt, and you say these are their needs, these are their goals, these are their frustrations. Then you give it a writing framework, you give it a tone of voice, you give it a style, and you say, use this rating framework, but make sure you address my target persona's needs and frustrations, and you're suddenly going to get writing that's much better. I did something the other day as well, which I thought was fun. I got it to do 5 different variations, and then I said, in an A/B test, which of these would be most successful? And it said, well, I can't tell you for sure, but based on other tests that have been published, I think number 3 would probably be the most successful based on, and it gave me a real breakdown of why that was the case. And it was pretty well logicked out. And when I looked at it, I went, probably right. And no, we haven't A/B tested that yet. You never know when you put it in the real world. But I thought that was interesting thing to do. Another prompt repository. We're talking about writing a lot here. This could equally be image generation, by the way. So you can give a style for image generation. But the one we haven't touched on much is coding, because maybe our audiences do a lot of that. But the one thing we might do more of is data analysis. So increasingly, as marketers and entrepreneurs and stuff, we've got data. But now we can get these tools to analyze that data and visualize it really effectively. And I was trying to learn a lot more about this. And I've been playing around with Kaggle. Kaggle's got loads of data sets you can download and play around with. Play around with a brilliant one where you've got loads of hotel bookings. And it tells you how many people it was for. Did they book a parking space? Did they book bed and breakfast, full board? Were there kids? All that stuff. How far in advance was it booked? Big table of data. And at the end, did they cancel or did they go ahead? So you can put all this stuff in and it will go, okay, now I can create a predictive model. And then a hotel gets a booking, they put it in the model, and if it says it's likely they might cancel this, you just phone them a month in advance and say, do you still want that booking? And what they found is they can actually either persuade people, yes, they are going to go ahead when they weren't, or they'll detect cancellations early so they can then fill their rooms without it having to be last minute and they lose the yield. That bit of data science you've just done in there is a big piece of work, and it does it in minutes with a data set.
Just be really careful that your data set doesn't get sucked into the large language learning model. And that's why if you're doing stuff like that, I would highly recommend the paid higher
and it's not just the paid, it's the Teams account.
Yeah.
That one's that gives you the privacy. But with this, if you're trying to, you're not a data scientist, you're not used to this kind of stuff. A website called Data Camp has got this amazing repository of, particularly for ChatGPT in this case, but it will work on everything, prompts for doing basic data science and data analysis and data cleaning as well. So again, we'll put it into the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast, but you're going to have all these repositories that you can learn from. And that's it. And my advice is, and this is something I've been through, which is really important. You go through and you build a prompt and you kind of work out what's working and what's not. But the problem is the AI will get itself into a bit of a tangle because it's basing stuff on what you've had in this conversation before. So go through, learn what's going on, what worked, what didn't, start a new conversation, and then build a new prompt based on what you've learned, and you'll get much better results. And then save your prompts. Somewhere have something that allows you to keep a repository of your prompts so that we can go through and say this one worked, this one didn't as well. Now, I want to get a little bit deeper now as well, which is one of the problems that you're going to have with these tools is that it's quite hard to get it to follow a real sequence of instructions. Okay, so you'll go into a normal prompt and you'll say, do this, 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 and this, and it will do the first 2, and then it will kind of lose track or it won't follow the instructions. Custom GPTs are much better at that because with a custom GPT, you're giving it instructions, it's building a prompt, and then it's triggering that prompt from the beginning. So I've written one, which we will again share in the show notes, that says, I'll give you a topic, then go through and give me 5 titles on that topic, suggest them, tell me, I'll select one, write me a bullet pointed structure for an article on that topic, and then work through each of those bullets one by one, writing the content, and then let me approve it or not. What's really important about that is that you can make it write long form content. This has been brilliant for me because it's learnt my tone of voice. It's got a set of instructions. It will write an SEO orientated title. It will structure the article. It will work through it step by step, and it will output something that's pretty good. But at each stage, I'm saying a bit more in depth, give an example, get rid of that bit. So it's kind of a partner as you go through it. So that's one way of doing it.
And it will save so much time with reprompting because if you know you want to push an article out every week, all of that pre-work is already set and saved.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I think it's about streamlining the workflow as opposed to replacing somebody. Now, if you want to take this a stage further, I won't go into too much today, but JSON, JSON coding, which is kind of a form of JavaScript, actually ChatGPT and Gemini will understand that stuff. So what you can do is do things like creating variables. So here is John's age. and this is the age, and then you can go increase John's age by 1 or whatever it might be, but it will keep track of that number, of that variable, of that particular piece of information. Jason, you can force it to go through a certain sequence of doing certain tasks. You could say, what learning style would you like? I would like informative. I would like example based. I would like, and then it will go through and keep doing that. So if you want continuity, if you want it to remember things, and if you want to follow a very detailed sequence, kind of like coding. So this is kind of semi-coding to some extent. You can do loads more really advanced stuff with some of these. So that, and it's not something many people know of. So there's a great little guide that I found on Medium for doing this. So we'll put the link into the show notes, and you can go and play with it if you want to take it that stage further. But the best thing I saw is someone created a tutor that would teach you anything. So you went in and said, what learning style, what level do you want to learn at, all those sorts of different things. And then what it would allow you to do is to go through, it would remember that, and then it would do a step-by-step tutorial. Yeah. And it worked really well. So again, we'll put it into the show notes as well. So there's some tips on going through and doing better prompts. We will share those repositories. We will share our examples, what we've managed to do, and so on from that as well. And we'd love to hear what you're doing. So as ever, if you go to targetinternet.com/podcast, there's the feedback form there, all the latest episodes and the show notes. And don't forget, we have got that ChatGPT masterclass on the 1st of May that will really get you going with this stuff as well. So as ever, thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.